All right.
Hey guys, welcome to UCA News's Career Day. And today I get to introduce Mrs. Hatton. She was a previous teacher here at Utah Connections Academy. But today she's come to talk about her career as a cake designer. So without further ado, Mrs. Hatton, if you'd like to, give a little introduction about your career and then what it is you do, and then we'll have more questions along the road.
And I am wondering, Mrs. Cornwall, if you can be timekeeper for me to let me know when we're about done, because otherwise
Sure.
I won't watch the time and we'll just talk cakes the whole time and forget to talk about other careers. So
Thank you.
we want to make sure we're doing it right. So let's see, I taught at UCA from 2013 until 2021. So some of your names are familiar. Some of you might recognize my face. I did get a haircut recently that's thrown off everybody, but that's okay. So I am now a full-time student getting my master's degree in instructional design, because one of the things I have heard throughout Career Day as I've been watching the ones that were recorded is choosing to do something that you're passionate about and finding your why. And a lot of times when working with students, when we ran into issues in courses, it would be really frustrating, right? If the instructions weren't right, or if there was a link that was weird, or if you were stuck on a certain part. So I'm back in school learning how to do that even better as a designer that would write courses for science. Now on the side, I like to do cake design. And some of you might remember back in the pandemic, we had a lot of quarantine baking happening. And one of the things we decided is that cake plus cake equals science. And we made a science cake in one of our virtual field trips, because I love cake design for two reasons. One, of course, is the artistic side. So I'd love to have you guys ask me questions about the art and how you make those designs and why you pick them. But I also love the science of it. Learning to perfect a recipe. What temperature do you have to get things? What kind of chemical reaction am I going to? How do I get those flavor combinations to be just right? So usually what I do for, as far as a career with it, is I make children's birthday cakes. The reason for that is usually when you're making cakes for a fancy event or something like a wedding, it can be really high risk and you want it to be perfect and it can be stressful. But when you make a children's birthday cake, they love it no matter what. So it could be a smushy cake. It could fall over as long as it has sprinkles and their favorite color. They're going to love it. So it's great to start out practicing that way, making things for your family or your friends, or starting to see who has a birthday. Maybe someone just needs a happy day. I can design a cake for them and they can see that. So I'll show a couple more pictures. So for example, this is a cake I made last month that I was paid for. The only thing I was told is that the little girl was turning 2. So I did 2 cats because she loves cats and pink. So it's really fun to design a cake when someone is wanting just something that they really love or that they like. And so I've done that before with other cakes. Not as like maybe cute as you would expect, but my son wanted an Amazon giant centipede cake. And that's not usually one I could go and find in the store. So it's really great to get to design a cake based on what we really like. So when he turned 8, and some of you guys are about that age range, when he turned 8, he really wanted a centipede cake. Now, Mrs. Grindstaff, who used to work at UCA a few years ago, saw this picture and told me it was too scary. So it might not be the favorite cake if you don't like scary things, but it's fun to design things no matter your age. So this is another one. This is one of my friends from high school. She messaged me and said, my baby's turning 1 and I can't find the exact color cake I want for his pictures. And this is what I really like it to be. Can we make something like it? So that's like the best part of cake design to me, is that you can have somebody say, I really want this. This is something that would bring me joy, but I can't find it anywhere. Can you help me make something that is going to be what I really like? So while I turn the timer for questions, I'm going to design a cake for you guys. So I have all my stuff set up. I'm going to kind of shift and turn and change my camera. And I might log in a second time to Zoom so you guys can see it from 2 views, but you'd only see it if you pin. Remember, you can pin the presenter. You can either have it set to be viewing speaker mode, so it'll switch on camera views between who's speaking, or if you want to pin a certain view, you can do that. So I might set up a second camera if we have some time. So let me stop sharing my screen and I'll get this first camera view up. And then while I'm doing that, I'll turn it over to the news team, I guess, for you guys to manage and direct questions. As I'm doing the cake, if someone types a question in the chat, you might need to read it out loud for me because it might be hard to see the chat as I go. So, oh, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to turn, no, I lied. I wanted this one to be the USB camera. So I'm going to switch. I'm wondering how well you guys can hear with this microphone from the computer, because I can switch microphones too. Does it fade if I go too far away from the screen?
I can still hear
I'm
you
about
good.
like that. Okay. So I'm gonna ditch my giant microphone over here. I'm gonna shift this one, and I might need to move that ring light. I just wanted it to be visible to you guys, but with the ring light in the background, it's not. Okay, so we'll do a view that's kind of like an angled view of the cake, and then I have a USB camera where you'll be able to look down on it. So first off, when you're getting to know someone and designing a cake for them, I do like to know things about them. So I recently heard that UCA updated their school colors. Does anyone know what colors you guys have now on like your school website and things?
There's like a purple. It's almost like a plum purple almost is what it looks like on the website. But I'm not sure if that's our colors or not.
Got some phone colors. There's a purple. I hear that Mr. D is good at putting like the pink colors on some of like the announcements. I saw on today's flyer. There's a lot of pink. Have you guys seen any other colors in like flyers or announcements or things from UCA News?
I feel kind of bad because I don't pay that close attention to the colors. And
Oh,
you're like,
Mrs. Cornwall is gonna make sure you guys are reading the announcements now.
So we have pink, blue, yellow, and purple. It's a bright pink and it's kind of a tealish blue and kind of a really cool green color.
So we have some really fun colors is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
And then I hear there's not an official mascot, but the UCA News tries to tell us they're the greatest of all time. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, so I went online knowing that, and I found a picture of a goat that I liked. And so we're gonna make a UCA News cake for you guys today. So while I'm getting all set up, go ahead with questions. And then like Emma, if you could make sure people are getting their questions read, if they put them in the chat, and I'll just get set up with my other camera view too.
all right, I can do that. Let's see. Anybody have a question that they want to put in the chat really quick or ask? The first question is it hard to make cakes?
So the first time I made a cake, I was probably 7 years old. I wanted to make one for the county fair because anything you turn into the county fair, they give you $1 for. So I didn't care about what it looked like or tasted like. I wanted my dollar. And I learned pretty quickly, you do kind of have to care about the ingredients and how you put toppings on, because I put so many toppings on, it just fell apart. It just crumbled under the weight of chocolate chips. So it can be a little bit tricky when you're trying a recipe for the first time. This recipe for this cake I made today is one I make all the time. And so it's really easy to make now, and I know it's going to turn out. But the first few times you're baking, plan on it not working. And you might have to throw away a lot of ingredients or cake, and that's okay. One time I forgot to put in the baking powder, and my cake turned into brownies. And everyone loved it. I gave it away and said, here's some free brownies. I have to remake a cake, but everyone ate it anyway.
All right, Gavin, do you want to go next?
My question, what do you think the coolest cake you've ever made is?
I think the one that turned out the exact way I imagined it was my dinosaur cake
Okay.
that I showed on the slide, because that one I imagined it exactly that way and it turned out exactly that way. So that one I thought was really cool.
That one is pretty cool. I am a fan of dinosaurs.
I can tell you the saddest cake I ever made was one of the first wedding cakes I did. And a lot of times in wedding cakes, they won't use real cake in all the layers because it takes a lot of time and money. So sometimes they'll use either styrofoam or Rice Krispies. And I did Rice Krispies, but I didn't know you should put it like up at the top for the pretend layers. So I had the real layers that weighed a lot more and the Rice Krispie layer on bottom, and it squished down while we were there at the wedding, and it just kept slowly tipping more and more and more. And the whole time I was there, people kept coming up to me and saying, you know, it's falling over, right? That was the saddest cake that I ever made.
no.
All right, we have 2 questions in the chat. So the first one is, what brand do you like to use to make your cake mix? And then the second one after that will be, what is the biggest cake you've ever made?
So I tend to make my cakes from scratch, and the website that I like to use for recipes is called sweetapolita.com. I can type that in the chat really quick. It's called sweetapolita.com. She makes awesome cakes, so I use her recipes the most. When I have to use a cake mix, I like to when I'm running out of time. And usually I'll use like a Duncan Hines or a Pillsbury, but whatever's cheapest, because they usually bake about the same. One thing to know about cake mixes is they'll usually bake really airy and light. So when you're using them for stacking, they might not be the best for doing like multiple layers. They're probably best for a single layer cake. And you might want to make a cake from scratch for if you're doing multiple layers. So the biggest cake I've ever made was 3 layers tall. And it was my little sister's wedding cake. It was the tallest, the biggest.
I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce the name, but I think it's Aislinn. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
I don't think she has a question. I think she's looking for Mr. G.
Oh, okay. My apologies. Does anyone else have a question that they want to ask? All right. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name, but you can go ahead.
Starts with the A.
Yeah, it starts with the A.
Now, Kate has a really good one. How many hours do you typically put into a cake?
Sorry for feedback. You guys probably got an echo there for a minute as I was getting into the USB camera. So for a typical like birthday cake, it can take me 4 to 6 hours because you have to bake the cake, you have to make the filling, and then you have to make the frosting. You have to let it go in the fridge and sit with what we call a crumb coating. That's the thin layer first. Then you come back and put on your thicker layer of frosting, and then you do all the decorations. So one of the things with having this as a career, you need to make sure you're paying yourself enough. So a lot of things that people have a hard time with cake design to make it a career is you have to charge quite a bit, because you're not just thinking about the ingredients, you're thinking about your time and your expertise. So sometimes people will be really surprised. They'll say, really? It can't cost that much for a cake. I can go to the store and get one for $5. And you have to realize that, well, you're creating something special just for them. And so you need to price it so that you're making enough money from your cake designs that you could have that as your job.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear
Okay.
you.
Are you thinking about like starting a business or something by creating cakes and learning new stuff about cakes?
So one thing I've thought about doing that I would like, I think even better than just making the cakes is teaching how to do the cakes. So I've thought about doing maybe summer camps or something like that, where I could show other people how to do the cakes, maybe some for younger kids who are just starting to learn or parents that want to learn. A few weeks ago, I was in the store looking for some ingredients because I wanted to try a new style of cake. And there was a mom there and she had her arms full of stuff and she was looking around and you could tell she was really scared. And she said, "I'm sorry, do you know cakes? I have to make a cake. I don't know what I'm doing." And so I was able to walk her through what things she would want to buy. And it made me realize that might be fun to do as a business. So then you're just teaching people how to do it.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to show you guys really quick. So one thing that I like to do is do a lot of buttercream on my cakes. Oops, sorry, that one bounced around. So one thing you'll want to do is just be patient with yourself as you're smoothing it out, and it's never going to be like super perfect. And so what's great is when you're baking and designing, you can do designs that are going to cover that up and make it even better. So I don't want to lose my goat on top as I put in my swirls. So I made a little cake pop that is just chocolate cake and frosting mixed together into whatever shape you want. And I made it look like a rock. So my mountain goat is going to be able to sit right on top and go up higher for me on my end. And so there's two ways you can do this. So I brushed mine up because I wanted this to look like a really tall, like mountain cake. And so I have a bunch of spots up here that aren't perfect. Where I might want to cover them up a little bit, maybe my cake showing through a little bit. This one's a chocolate cake with an Oreo mousse in the middle. And so the chocolate was a little bit hard to hide with the white frosting. Sometimes you can design your colors based on the cake you're making. It's easier to hide the cake if you're doing a vanilla cake with the white frosting. So I want to kind of cover those up with our colors that we talked about. One thing you can do is to cover that up first and then do your swirls. I'm going to do my swirls first because I don't want to wait for my drips to set. The drips that I'm going to use are made out of what's called ganache. It's white chocolate and some whipping cream, and you heat it up so that it can drip down the sides of your cake. That's one of my favorite kind of cakes to make because it's great. It looks messy and everyone loves it. You can design messy cakes so that they look like that on purpose and you don't have to stress about them being perfect. So when you do that though, you have to let the ganache sit and set if you do it first, because if not, if you put your frosting on top, it's gonna slowly slide off your cake and it won't stay in place. So because I don't wanna have to run this cake back to the fridge, I'm gonna put my frosting up first, then we'll do our drips kind of last of all is what we're gonna do. So I'm doing a different order just so I can put my drips right on the side, but you could cover it and do the whole top and let it drip down. We're just gonna do it just on the side. But these are kind of the best ways to get started in cake design is go and get yourself a couple of different buttercream things. So this is what's called a star tip. If you can only get one kind of cake tip, it would be this one because it can do all sorts of different borders and designs and swirls. So I like to put mine with a coupler. You'll see some people put them straight in a bag, but I like the coupler because I can take it off and change what's on my tip without having to take all the frosting out and make a mess. So I like to have a coupler too. You'll notice my bag, it's pretty heavy plastic. This is reusable. You can also buy disposable ones. So if you're getting started, you might want to just start with maybe a star tip and even just a disposable bag. And that would be all you would need to do this. You don't necessarily need all the fancy different tools and you can still make it work. So I'm gonna do some swirls. One thing I've learned is I like to do more. I don't know about you guys with frosting. Is more better all the time? I lean towards the more. Yeah. So I used to do 3, 1, 2, 3, and I realized it's actually kind of fun. I try to do 5 to get that nice, really tall look. So that's what I'm going to do is go around. And I learned this trick is I used to just try to go all the way around, but then it would be uneven. So I'm going to do 1 here and over and on each side. And we're going to try to swirl it 5.
You
So
might be like,
just to
"Whoa."
give you a time, you're sitting with 10 minutes left.
Perfect. That'll be a good amount of time.
While you're doing that, Mrs. Hatton, are you okay if Yessie asks you a question?
Yes, of course.
So, what would you do if a customer requested a cake design you had never attempted before?
So usually if they really want that design, and I've never tried it, like maybe it's a flavor I've never done or design I've never done, what I'll do is I'll negotiate with them and say, I want to do this, but I've never done it before. So I'm not going to charge for my time. I'll just charge for the ingredients, but you have to be okay that it might not be perfect. That way I get the chance to try it out, and it's cheaper for me, or it's cheaper for them. So they're okay with it usually, with like, oh, it wasn't perfect, that's okay. Sometimes if I have the time, I'll practice. So when I did my little brother's wedding cake, I made so many cakes to practice that then we were just sick of eating cake. So my favorite thing to do is give away my cakes when I'm doing practice ones, because you can't eat that much cake ever. It's just too much cake.
Alyssa has a question next, so we'll have her go, and then Uzziah's.
I really want to be a cake designer. Could you have any information for me so I can like practice?
Hey, Alyssa, you're very, very quiet.
I heard that I want to be a cake designer, but I didn't hear the rest of the question.
I want to be a cake designer, so can you give me some information for what I need to do so I can become one?
Let's see. Yeah, so the thing I would start with is practice baking your cakes, practice different kind of recipes, having your family eat them. And then if you want to, when you're starting to get ready to sell them, look up the rules for where you live for selling homemade goods. So every town's gonna have slightly different requirements. You could start out really simple with things that don't need special permissions, like make a bunch of cupcakes and do a cupcake stand instead of a lemonade stand, and practice some of your things that way. I've seen some people start with doing made to order things by setting up maybe a website and saying, hey, I'm happy to make some things, just you have to be really careful on the internet. Tell them where you live, like let me redo. Internet safety. Don't tell them where you live. Tell them the area that you serve. So like I'm making cakes in Utah County. I'm not going to accept an order from Cache County, right? So sometimes when you're designing, you have to be aware of like, I'm not going to mail a cake clear across the country. So sometimes you do that, but yeah, internet safety. Whew, that was a good misspeak. Mrs. Cornwell, next news day needs to be talking about internet safety now.
Really?
I'm not sure if my camera's working. Can you guys see on the second?
It's not working.
Can you see if I pin? It's the other one that says Elise Hatton. Can you guys see the goat pieces if you are looking for the non-speaking one?
Yeah, it's working.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought I lost it. So I'm gonna be doing there, so you won't be able to see it from me very well. So if you want to pin the one with the goat pieces, that's what I'm gonna work on right now. And you guys can keep asking questions. This is the other thing where you'd need is research ingredients as you're starting to be a cake designer. So this is fondant, and a lot of times the really cute toppers that people want are fondant. And a great thing you can do is look up different YouTube tutorials on how to do these. So I like to prep all of my pieces, and then I have to glue them together. Do you guys think I want to use real glue?
no.
Okay, good answer. You want everything edible on your cakes. And if you're going to be putting something that's not, you need to warn somebody. So on this little goat head, you can see I stuck something down in there. I'll show it up if you're looking here. That's a piece of spaghetti that's not cooked. I like to do that. It's a little bit safer than putting a toothpick to support your fondant pieces, but I would still tell someone when I drop off the cake, hey, just so you know, don't let your little kid bite right into that goat. You're gonna need to take their head off and take the spaghetti piece out so that they don't accidentally chomp on that. But if they do, it's not as big of a problem because they'll be able to not be hurt by that. But if it was like a toothpick, they would. with cakes that are tall, I also make sure that I put, I use plastic straws down in my cakes so that they know that it's going to stay up, but I have to tell them, by the way, when you cut a cake, you're going to see the straw. All right, so we're going to just finish putting together our little goat here. I'm going to tilt this because I put his head, I just glued his head to his body. And you guys can keep asking questions as we go, but I'll try to get this stable.
So I have a question. My question is, what is one of the most precious memories you have from baking?
I think for me, it wasn't even baking, but just learning to cook. There's a home video of me when I was 3 and I wanted eggs, and I made my mom, she made all the eggs. She helped me crack them. And I was really excited about all the eggs we were making. And then at the end I said, okay, now do that mixy. So they were all cooked, but I didn't tell her I wanted scrambled eggs. So we made fried eggs and I thought that we could still scramble them. So I love watching that video because I was so upset and disappointed that it turns out you can't scramble eggs after they're already fried.
All right, Robin is up next.
Okay. So have you ever made like a 2-layer cake? Like one was like 1 layer and then a second layer?
Yeah, if you're gonna do that, you'll notice I have on my cake at the bottom, you can kind of see it. It's a piece of cardboard. Those are called cake boards. So if you're gonna layer cakes, you need cake boards. And you can get ones that have a circle in the middle where a big dowel can go through if you're making a really tall one. If you're just doing 2 layers, you don't need to do a piece all the way through. But I would put the cake together and I would set it on top of the other one, just because it would have a cake board underneath the top one. And then you have to be aware of proportions, usually about 2 inches. So if I had an 8-inch cake on the bottom, I'd bake a 6-inch cake for the next layer. So about 2 inches. If I want really wide ledges so that I can do decorations on them, then I'd go 3 inches. But you have to be aware kind of proportions. And stacking them is always the scariest part because you never want them to fall all the way over.
I have a question. I'm kind of curious. How do you go about planning and executing your ideas or like a request?
Yeah, so usually the first thing I'll do is I'll ask the flavor that they want, because some flavors could take maybe a little longer or a little bit more effort. Like if they want different flavors in the layers or a different kind of filling. So usually I'll start with asking what flavor of cake, and then I'll ask maybe where the cake is going to be. Are they doing an inside party or an outside party? Some buttercreams, this one that I used today was a lot of butter. And if this is going to an outside party, it wouldn't last, it would melt. Oh, and I'm totally over time, guys. I can totally finish up. Sorry, Mrs. Cornwall. So I would start and kind of plan out each piece, and then I plan in advance. Some cakes, if you're doing like a big wedding cake, you have to wait and make sure that maybe you might bake your layers in advance and then put them in the freezer and then thaw them when it's time to decorate, because it would take so much time to put them all together.
Okay, we've got Aislinn and then Anastasia. So
That's not you going until 3:30, Miss Hatton.
I know. So you can see I'm putting together my goat. I have a couple more pieces to do. I know we're kind of at time. So the last thing I want to show you is the drip. And then I can stay and put him together for a second while your other presenter goes. It's still in the same room, right, Mrs. Cornwall?
Oh yeah, it's a recording, so you can go over.
Oh, okay. So I'm just going to show you with the drip. You want it to be really nice and runny, but we're going to do some color. So I'm going to just start and do just one color while we're talking. And then I'll maybe add some other colors and get my goat on top. But while you guys are watching the recording, and then I can just show them a little bit. And then the last thing to know is like, you can always learn new things. So I think that's the best part of being a cake designer or in any career is it's always about trying to learn new things. So one thing I learned a few years ago was about this kind of color, this food color that's a powder. And so it makes a big difference on things like your little fondant. So like my little goat, he's looking pretty cute, pretty happy, right? But if I add some little pink to his cheeks, it can make a big difference just coloring him that way. And so I can just put on he gets a little makeover, a little bit of makeup. And I can do that and it makes a big difference on how he looks now. And so it's always fun to learn new things like that.
Cute.
We had a question get put in the chat that, and they were wondering how hard it is to make animals.
It's not as hard as you would think. If you ask your art teachers about working with clay, it's a lot like working with clay. The biggest thing to get used to is because you're working with something that's made of sugar, you can't add water, like that would make it too liquidy. You'd use like shortening to make it a little bit more flexible, and you'd use powdered sugar to make it a little bit more firm, and you just practice. So it's kind of like doing Play-Doh. Play-Doh is a good way to kind of practice making it. Or I like to just buy my fondant. I don't make it from scratch because it's messy to make from scratch. It's not super hard, but it's messy because it's a lot of powdered sugar. So you can even go to a store, like any craft store, or most grocery stores will have just little packages like that, and they cost $3 or $4. I would recommend just getting a white one because then you can break it apart and you can use gel food coloring to color it to different things and practice it. And then just watch little videos and do it piece by piece as you plan it around. And it's totally edible. My kids always try to steal it. I have to hide it because they think it's fun. They think it tastes like marshmallows.
We have a question from Anastasia now.
Hello. So what type of textures are you used to, or has like a person ever asked you to make a cake like a texture that you didn't know about, or like a difficult one?
Yeah, one thing I've never made is one with like a crunchy layer, like some people like nut fillings. And I've never done anything like that. I usually do a mousse filling because it's really easy. You just take whipping cream and you whip it up. And if you have a pudding mix, you can put it in there. You can make any flavor of mousse. So that's an easy cooking tip. So I like doing those, but I've done some fruit fillings before, but I've never done crunchy in the middle. I would have to practice for that. I've never done that.
So you can make me a crunchy one. You can practice for me.
And Mrs. Cornwell's always trying to get me to mail her cakes. I told her I don't think it would work.
I think she should just come down and give it to me.
It would work, first of all. Even if it's a bit wrapped, it's cake, eat it.
So this one, it's a little bit colder than I would love to put it on. You might want to test the runniness. So sometimes it's nicer to have it be a little bit warmer and it would flow a little bit better. But what you can do, and it's easier, again, it's easier to do before your frosting, but I didn't want our frosting to like totally drip. But this is the great part about Drippy Cakes is that all you do is put like a blob. Do that. And I'm just going to let it run down and it will look cool and it'll taste good because it's made out of white chocolate. And I'm just going to let it drip down and I'm going to do some different colors around. And so by the end, we're going to have a UCA colored goat cake for our UCA news staff. But I will let you guys jump into your recorded presentation of our next career. But I'll stay on mute and I'll have my camera on, this big camera on, and I'll finish up as you guys watch your next career, okay?
Thank you. You are awesome. We're all going to make cake now. I'm
Because
sure.
they send you pictures. You can put them in a newsletter, huh?
Yep. All right, guys, let's go to our next career, which is Liz. Let me stop this recording.